All right, it's halftime, and we welcome back our special guest, Eric May, back to the podcast. You already heard him talking lots of football here, so obviously you know that he knows his stuff. He also has seen a lot of football here on Blue Ridge 11, where I work currently and where Eric is typically the voice of LL football. And we at Blue Ridge, we're celebrating our 30th year of covering high school football, Eric, and you've been there since pretty much day one, from what I've been told, since what, 92? How accurate is that? And what do you remember from the early days?
Boy, I tell you, I know it's been a while. When I look at a roster and I call a name, I'm thinking, geez, that's a familiar name. Oh yeah, I called when his dad played. So I've seen now fathers and sons over this span of time, which it's a lot of fun. It really is. I mean, it's hard to believe it's been 30 years, and I look back at some of the games, and just the quality of the footage, and the way technology has just made things so much clearer has been outstanding. And of course, the success of the teams in this area over that 30-year span, we couldn't have been here and locked in at a better time as far as football, in the Lancaster Lebanon League.
So from the records that I saw here, the earliest video we have is October 3rd, 1992, when Manheim Central went to Warwick and played. Do you remember that game, and what is special about that game?
Wow, it was the first night game at Warwick, and when I looked at the tape, I mean, the place was packed. People lined up around the end zones, 3-4 deep. I mean, this was a huge event because more and more schools had started to get lights. I don't know if people in Lidditz ever thought that Warwick would have lights, but it was the main event, and it was just so much fun to be there for that night.
So when did they play games then? Before that?
It used to be Saturday afternoons. Yep. Saturday afternoons, 2:00.
Wow.
Yep.
And so you grew up Manheim Township, and Tim, you grew up in Lidditz. So do you remember, Tim, going to those Saturday games? Was that a thing? Was that like everybody went on Saturday, or was it underattended? How was that?
Everybody went to Saturday games. And in fact, everybody thought Saturday football meant high school football. Remember, when you go back to like the 80s and early 90s, you didn't have a lot of college games on there. ESPN was just getting started. So people just went to the Saturday afternoon football game. It was just a rite of passage. And I agree with Eric. I don't think people ever thought that Warwick would get lights because they didn't want to change. I mean, that was really the big thing. And it wasn't the school district that actually paid for it, Eric. Remember, it was a bunch of parents that actually got together to raise funds that actually erected everything. So it was not the school, but yeah, it was just weird. I don't know if I was at the first game, although I remember seeing the footage of that first game, Eric, and you and John Whitwer, who were on the broadcast, you were broadcasting on the other side where we generally now, because that was where the press box used to be. It was a lot smaller.
Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah, and back then, Friday night, if you played a Friday night game, that was kind of special because everybody played on Saturday. So, now it's just the opposite. Boy, if you play on a Saturday, that's not the norm anymore.
It's interesting because from my perspective, growing up, middle of the 90s is when I hit high school, and we just always had games on Friday night. So I don't know a time where there wasn't Friday night football. I can't tell you, other than playing Harrisburg or Bishop McDevitt, on the road, we never had a Saturday game. So for me, that would be so weird. But for you guys, it sounds like it was very normal.
Yeah, it was. Okay. It was a treat for a Friday night game.
So was Warwick one of the first in our coverage area to get lights, or who would have stood out as one of the first high schools to have lights?
Well, Ephrata had lights. Yeah, Ephrata.
Yeah, I think Warwick was one of the last ones, weren't they, Eric?
Could be. I mean,
Manheim Central did, I believe.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought up Manheim Central, Tim, because Eric, you got to cover, like you kind of alluded to, but didn't go into great detail, one of the best runs in the history of high school football. And it was right here in our area, in your guys' area. I mean, I'm from Dauphin County, so I didn't get to see a whole lot of it, but Manheim Central was on absolute fire from 1992 to 2001, where they were winning district titles every year. Now, it does kind of date back a tiny bit to like the late 80s, early 90s for them, but in consecutive 10 years in a row, 92 to 01, they were just winning District 3 title after District. Eric, what do you remember about how that started? And then once that train was rolling, was there a different feeling? There had to have been.
Oh yeah. Well, and I don't remember the year because it was really before the districts really started to take off, but Manheim Central went 13-0, and all of a sudden their season was over, and they had these shirts, 13-0, no place to go, because it was before districts. Once the districts playoffs took off, all of a sudden they just rode that momentum, and all of a sudden it's like, wow, we're going back to Hershey again. We're going again and again and again. And I thought, this is awesome. I mean, I don't want to say we took it for granted, but that was the epitome to call a game from Hershey Park Stadium. You're high above the field. You see everything, the smell of chocolate. And of course, everything's decorated for Christmas. I mean, we had so much fun with that too. But yeah, to be part of that time period where Manheim Central just dominated and just saw them win championship after championship, it was special. It really, really was special.
That's so weird. They were 13-0 and had nowhere to go. You don't remember what year that was?
It had to be, I'm going to say it's somewhere in the mid to late 80s.
Okay.
I want to say 87, 88, something like that.
Okay. Tim, what do you remember about that run? I mean, at what point did you latch on to any Blue Ridge coverage? And
so I think I started keeping stats for Eric and John when they were in the booth in 96, 97. I think is when I started. Just a couple of things really that stood out sort of off the field a little bit. We would joke about the Manheim Central fans that they would come to the games literally Friday morning. Remember, Eric, they would stand at the gate because the guys from the truck would be there around 1 or 2 o'clock, and there was already fans deep. It was the only game in town, not so much not even in Manheim, but it was everywhere. And they used to pack that place. It was unbelievable. 2,000-3,000 people. They were all standing deep. And, Eric, I think part of that, we were taking it for granted, weren't we? Because we would, at least I did a little bit, because we would always say, well, we got 10 regular season games and, 4 with Manheim going to districts and, possibly states. We were like, well, we'll be at least we were planning on playing football, or at least on our telecast, rather through Thanksgiving. All those quarterbacks that went through there, of course, the Thompsons and Smoker, and of course, the
Nagy,
coach of the Bears with Nagy, and man, it was so good, and to the point, Eric, where they were just dominating everything, weren't they? I mean, they were the number one program, not only in Lancaster County, but in District 3.
Yeah, and I think really they kind of set the bar. All of a sudden, people are like, what's so special? What's Manheim Central doing differently? And we've heard it before that if Manheim Central season ends, whether with a win or a loss, it doesn't take long. A couple days after that, some of these guys are right back in the weight room and getting ready for next year. So I think that kind of set a tone, as far as the pride, because, hey, let's face it, after you win a couple, if you're an underclassman, now you're a senior, well, you don't want to be the one to break this chain. So they put in the extra time. And, you look back at some of these Manheim Central teams, and they didn't necessarily have the biggest guys, but it was just something about once they stepped in between those white lines, it was a whole new animal. And and especially that 2003 team, the one that won the state title. Again, I don't get a chance to really follow the offensive line that much because I'm busy following the ball. But when I watch the game on PCN, I would watch the line. That group of linemen were just incredible. I mean, just to coin a phrase, road graders, maulers. I mean, that fit them to the T, and that was fun to watch. That was a fun team to watch.
Yeah, all the skill players will tell you that the offensive line was just outstanding, and
Yeah.
they do give a lot of credit to that. So I'm looking here at the team chronologies for District 3. Manheim Central won a game in the AAA semifinals in 1992. They beat Garden Spot 21-6. They did not lose again in the District 3 playoffs until 2002 in the AAA semifinals to Lower Dolphin 42-40.
Yeah, I remember that one because it was a late touchdown pass.
Yes.
And I can see it was on the far sideline, and it just stunned everybody because I mean Lower Dolphin went toe to toe because Chad, I'm sure if you look at some of those scores throughout the history, they weren't just beating people; they were dominating victories.
68-6, 42-7, 41-9 Cacalico in 1996. Yeah.
So all of a sudden now here's the Lower Dolphin team that plays 4 quarters and ends up coming up with a win. But after that, they hit the reset and went right back at it again.
Well, it's funny you say that. Yeah, 2003 was the state title game. They did play Lower Dolphin that year, and in the AAA championship game. Any guess at what the score was? Wasn't pretty.
Yeah, and I'm sure there was a little bit of revenge on the mind of not only the players but the coaching staff as well.
Did they score in the 60s, Chad?
No, it wasn't that bad.
Okay.
It was like 48-7 or something.
It was 38-0.
Oh,
yeah. They made sure they did not score a single point in that game.
Oh yeah.
Hey Chad, if I can just get in here quick and get Eric's comments. Eric, when you go back to the 90s, remember how Berwick was always their rival?
Yep.
Remember that was always a huge thing, and they could never get past them, it seemed.
Yep. It was Berwick and then Strathaven. But it was in that 2000 season that they beat Strathaven, get 3-0 on a field goal on an extremely windy day. And to think, they go from cold and windy and then to play in the snow for a state title game, and then have all those points too. Yeah. You would think in a game like that you're not going to see a lot of points. Well, I was just the opposite. That was just a classic.
And that's one of your favorite moments although you didn't really get to announce that, so maybe that's not your favorite moment.
No, because that was a piece. PCN carried all the state championship games. I contemplated driving up there, but by the time I got home from work and I'm hearing the traffic reports and there's delays and accidents, I'm thinking, you know what? I'm just going to stay home where it's nice and warm and just watch it. And I tell you, I was like a nervous wreck. I mean, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, oh God, I got to get to, But when I call a game, I'm just so in the moment. I'm not thinking, one thing or the other. I just call it as I see it. But now you sit back as a spectator, it's a whole different feeling.
Yeah, there's a lot of great memories from that game. And the fact that it was in the snow and all of that. And I think they were the first LL team to win a state title too. Coach Gingrich had said that in his interview, that there was so much pride for the LL because they were the first. Then of course, Lancaster Catholic would go on to win a couple and all of that. So yeah. All right, cool. Let's switch to some of your favorite rivalries to cover over 30 years. That's changed, especially even with Manheim, it's changed. So, what are some of your favorite ones to cover on Blue Ridge 11?
Well, I know early on, Ep4 to Warwick was always a big rivalry. Now I know that Warwick has taken control of this series recently, but go back 15, 20 years and it would be quite a contest between the two. In fact, I don't remember the year, but the game was at Warwick and it got so chippy and out of hand. The officials stopped the game with, I think, about 5 minutes left and said, that's it, game over. And everybody was like, what? they had enough.
Who won?
I want to say I think Warwick was winning. Geez, now I don't even remember, but because I mean, it was a close game. It
Yeah.
was a close game, but it got to the point where there was just, I guess, just it got out of control, penalties and everything else, and they said, "That's it, we're shutting it down." Never ever saw that before.
Do you remember that, Tim? Did you see that game?
I remember it. Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I think people were stunned. You know, you talk about rivalry games. Of course, Warwick Ephrata, that's been going on for so long with the Mail Trophy. But Eric, when you talk about it, think how the rivalries have sort of have really shifted. Remember, it was Conestoga Valley and Manheim Central in the '90s. The Cacalico Manheim Central rivalries really didn't get into play until the mid 2000s, maybe. Warwick and Ephrata was always there. And then it's all when those teams started to shift, because Cacalico, I think, was in the lower section, weren't they? And they never played Manheim Central.
Right.
Warwick was above. So you never had those rivalries. I remember one of the key games that we used to do every year besides Warwick and Ephrata was Ephrata Cacalico. Wasn't that always the first game of the year? The second game was
it was for the Ephrata Review Cup. Yeah.
That must have been fun to cover too. Of course, it doesn't happen right now. They've stopped playing each other, which is, for both communities, such a bummer, because it's, those are fun games to watch and to cover. And hopefully they will get that back in rotation here in the next couple of years. But yeah, that had to have been a lot of fun to cover too, I would have to imagine, Eric.
It was, because, when you get a game like that, the schools are less than 5 miles apart. The players know each other. I'm sure that they've attended camps together. Probably, some are even friends outside of football. So, but when it's game time, you want to beat your next door neighbor in the worst way.
Yeah. What about that Manheim Conestoga Valley rivalry? I never got to experience that. Again, I'm from Harrisburg, the Central Dauphin area. So we had our own rivalries. The Cumberland Valley Central Dauphin rivalry was very heated. I'd have to imagine that's how the Conestoga Valley Manheim Central rivalry was, especially knowing that it was Mike Williams and Jim Cantafio, two electric coaches.
Yeah. Well, and again, you go back to the early part of the 90s when CV went to a state playoff game, and they were the cream of the crop of the Lancaster Lebanon League for that time period. Well, then all of a sudden, now Manheim Central started coming on the scene, and all of a sudden now you got two teams, vying for that top spot. You got the coaches going at it, verbally, in the newspapers, and then when it's game time, the jawing back and forth. So that just intensified, that rivalry. And again, you get a game like that, and there'd just be a packed house, both bleachers, end zones. I mean, that's high school football at its best when you get crowds like that on hand.
All right, so I'm looking at it here. Tim, we'll get your thoughts in a minute. 91, Conestoga Valley beats Middletown in the AAA championship. Is that when they went to states?
Would have been.
Right. So then the next year, they're the defending District 3 champs. In the AAA, they lose to Manheim Central 23-14 to start that 92 run. Do you remember that? Did we have that on the channel?
I believe we did.
Wow, I'm going to have to go back and watch that. That must have been a fantastic game. Then they play Manheim Central in 94 in the AAA championship. They lose 41-6 in that game. And then in 97, they lose in the semis to Manheim Central 28-10. And then in 2000, kind of at the end of the run there for CV, they did it again. Boy, that must have been just wild to be an observer and a commentator to kind of know both sides and see what was going on there.
Well, and I think, Eric, they were in the same section, right? So this has been the second meeting usually in the district. That made even the play-up even a lot bigger.
Yeah. And let's face it, I'm sure that when these two teams met, I'm sure both head coaches say, all right, we're not going to just win this game. We're going to win it in decisive fashion. And the thing is, both Mike Williams and Jim Cantafio will be very open about it. They're saying, we wanted to just annihilate each other, but now they can laugh about it and carry on and get along. That was not the case when these two teams were at this peak of the rivalry. They just did not like each other.
Yeah. So Conestoga Valley won the Section 2 title in 91. And then Mannheim won it the next 5 years. And then in 97, Conestoga Valley shared it with Cedar Crest. Then Mannheim won it a bunch of times there on out. So yeah, I could see how it would be, the second meeting also in the playoffs would be very contentious. Any other real quick rivalries that we should touch on before we move on to another topic?
Well, like Tim said, I think, most recently with Mannheim Central and Cocalico, and I think it really intensified once Dave Gingrich got that first win against him. He said he waited a long time, and they had many close games, and then to finally get over the hump, I think was a huge moment for Cocalico, because now it thought, okay, now we're going to try and level the playing field here, and then Cocalico came up with some big wins against them.
Still haven't beaten him in the playoffs though. That's such a bummer.
That's incredible. Yeah, like 0-8 now or something like that.
Yeah, somewhere in that range. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Favorite teams. You can just hit a couple here, favorite teams to kind of cover. Obviously, I'm assuming Mannheim has to be on there.
To pick out one during that.
No, I mean any teams, years, coaches in that, what did you enjoy? What team?
I think that no doubt that 2003 season was just a magical one. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I think what we saw out of Warwick last season was a magical team, and the sad thing is they never got that chance to play Mifflin. Everybody was looking forward to it, and you know what, win or lose, just to be able to play that game, because I think that would have drawn a huge crowd for that contest, and not to be able to play it at all, I think is it's sad. It's disappointing, but it is what it is. And then the Cocalico team that went to the state semis a couple of years ago,
2019.
Oh, man, that team was so much fun to watch. I mean, offensively, defensively, the way they would swarm to the ball. I mean, that was just a very entertaining ball club.
Tim,
Eric, you're forgetting the biggest game that you and I did.
Well, yeah, okay. As far as a game is concerned, he was talking teams.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Yeah. But all right, now we want to get to the game. Oh yeah, there's no doubt that game between Cocalico and Bishop McDevitt, played at Elko, is one that will forever be etched in my memory. Just to see we're in the press box and the crowd's coming in, and it's just a stream of headlights, and Tim and I are like, hey, it's Field of Dreams. And just the way the game ended, Cocalico getting the game-winning touchdown on a pass.
Yeah.
And then to see Bishop McDevitt go down the field thinking, oh my God, they're gonna come up with a game-winning, touchdown late. And this was a McDevitt team that was just loaded with talent. Wasn't it Rakai Nelson? Was the big wide receiver?
Yep. Went to Notre Dame, I believe.
Yeah, Jordan Scott was the QB. And that last drive, Scott scrambling, and he's making plays left and right. Cocalico's trying to chase him down, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, how is this going to end? And Cocalico comes up with the win. That locker room, because I went down to congratulate Coach Kaufman and the players, and you would have thought they had won the Super Bowl, because here's Cocalico going up against the mid-pen powerhouse to come up with a win. Yeah.
It wasn't even the finals. It was the 94 AA semis.
Yeah.
Which is wild. They could have had a letdown game the next week against Juniata, but they didn't. They won the championship. Yeah, and then, of course, McDevitt comes back and thumps them the next year in the championship. You had mentioned some of those favorite teams, and 2019 Cocalico's squad. Noah Palm was on that team. He's probably one of the favorites that I've ever gotten to cover in my brief broadcasting career. Do you have a few favorite players? I'm sure Boker's on there.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh gosh. And here's the other thing too. Not only the teams, that we had a chance to see, but some of the talent, and guys that went on to to play at the next level, Smoker and one guy that just, because I think really Jeff Smoker was kind of set the tone for all of a sudden, seeing a freshman quarterback and maybe a sophomore quarterback coming in and playing extremely well, that other schools are going to try and find that and groom a young guy that they can, move through the system. I think Evan Simon he just looked like a quarterback. I mean, just his drop back and his style and his delivery. Then you had a guy like Dakota Royer, offensively and defensively, Zimmerman. I mean, these guys were just incredible athletes. And then you talk about Noah Palm, and I wrote down some names.
Let's hear them.
Let's see, Austin Hartman. Another guy that the guy would carry the ball 30 to 35 times a game, and like he never got tired. He would just keep going and going and going. And a guy that I really enjoyed watching was Kyle Fisher. This guy was so fast, and his stride was incredible. You're thinking, all right, he's back for a kickoff. All he needs is a slight opening. He gets that opening, nobody's going to catch him. And you would see the pursuit, and all of a sudden he'd look and say, all right, time to throw it into overdrive, and whoosh, gone. I mean, nobody was close to him. So much fun to watch. And then obviously the last couple of years with Warwick and the success that they've had with, McCracken and Reed and Glass and Schmitz and Forney. I mean, the list goes on, and I'm obviously leaving out some defensive players too, but and then Andre Wideman, we get another year for him. He's going to be, it's going to be fun to see what he can do next year to cap off his career at Ephrata. So, again, just blessed to see this much talent over a 30-year period, and I'm missing out on so many more. But yeah.
Tim, do you have a favorite in there? One or two?
The names escape me, but the quarterbacks, the Rush boys from
yes,
Warwick. Remember how good that was around 2006 to maybe 8 or 9. Those kids were good. Warwick had some good teams back then.
Yeah.
Around middle 2000.
John Resch, Eric Resch. Yeah. And the thing about John Resch, he was not a big kid, but I tell you what, he would stand in the pocket and he would take hit after hit, and he just kept getting up, and he just refused to give in, and just tough as nails. And Eric Resch, I remember the one year they were to play Ephrata on Friday night at Ephrata, but there was a thunderstorm and lightning and everything else, so the game got postponed to Saturday. It was so stinking hot and humid. Eric Resch just carried the ball like there was no tomorrow. I drive by Warwick High School Sunday afternoon. He's out there playing tennis. You just played an exhausting game the day before, and he's out running around and hitting a tennis ball the day after a game. Those two brothers, just motors that wouldn't quit.
Chad, if I can just jump in here, one thing that we're talking about the players and teams and stuff, and Eric, the transformation that we've seen of stadiums over the years. Manheim Central was really the first one to get turf. And up until that, everyone's like, oh, you can't have turf. It's going to cause injuries. There was a huge deal about that. Now, if you don't have a turf field, it's like, what? You don't have a turf field? But remember all those years in the rain and the mud and the snow, and you couldn't see the lines on the field.
Yeah. It made it a little trying. They had the yard markers, but then players walking up and down the sidelines, they'd kick them over, and all of a sudden, okay, you go from the 10, all of a sudden there's the 40, but all right, where's the 30? It could make for an interesting time, no doubt about it.
Well, the only one left is Cocalico in our area as a grass field now.
I tell you, Garden Spot did an outstanding job with their facility. I mean, I thoroughly enjoy going over to Garden Spot because, again, you're high up, you see the field, you can see the plays developing, just don't want to catch them on the day that they wear the camo uniforms where it's hard to read the numbers, but understand why they do it. And I'm not going to argue that point.
All right. Well, that was a great combo, Eric. That's why we wanted to have you on, because you have seen 3 decades of LL football. I think they're in their 50th year overall. So you've seen, what is it? Two-thirds of is my math right there? You've seen 30 of the 50 years.
Yeah.
And covered it. And then obviously played, through some of it as well.
Yeah. And very fond memories about that too, because again, you got to, you played a Friday night game. That was a treat. And, I remember getting to play at Reading Municipal Stadium, playing on the baseball field, and played against Muhlenberg. And that was fun. That was fun. But now, here it's the 50th year, and it's the last year, because next year it's going to be the merger with the Berks County League. And, at first I was kind of like, I don't think this is a good idea. But once they broke down the sections, it really does even out. And I think, this could be a lot of fun. And I think we're going to see some really, really good football, starting in 2022 with this new merger.
I know we're all excited and we're coming around to the concept. I will point out this year, had it been Berks and LL, Wilson won Section 1.
Mm-hmm.
Exeter was pretty good. Governor Mifflin was pretty good. One of those teams may have won Section 2.
Mm-hmm.
Conrad Weiser, Daniel Boone, pretty good. Might have had a shot in Section 3. Wyomissing, Berks Catholic might have had a shot in Section 4, although LS would have had something to say about that. And I'm not exactly sure of the power struggle in Section 5, but the Berks coming into the LL and then winning 4 of the 5 section titles would not have sat good with all the LL fans. They might have been thinking, all right, this merger is 2 years and done, and we're done with this. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think this is something that's going to be here to stay. I'm sure that once this season is done and they put a wrap on it, and then you start looking towards next year, then chatter is going to be, all right, well, if we would have had it this year, look at the matchups we would have had. And I just think it's just going to make things that much juicier for this time next year when the football season starts. Yeah. And the anticipation of some of the matchups and the anticipation of rivalries that can be built, starting next year.
Yeah, we'll have to expand our coverage of Blue Ridge, maybe bring on some of the Berks coaches and have them talk to us about joining the LL and some of the matchups that they have to look forward to this year and all of that. That'll be fun. Tim, any final thoughts from you on any of that merger talk? And again, the fact that Berks is no slouch with some of their top tier teams.
Just that I think Lancaster Lending League better get used to a lot of teams that are going to run the football. And it's sort of, I sort of liken the Berks County League to the Big Ten. They just run the football, and that's what their bread and butter is. And, but conversely, the Berks County schools haven't seen anybody that can really pass the ball a lot. So I think that's where it's going to be. I want to see which of those teams is going to bite first and change their offense. Is it going to be Berks County going to have a little bit more passing, or is Lancaster County teams going to run the football a little bit more?
Eric, do they call it the Berks LL? Do they just call it the LL? What do they call it?
I don't know if they actually came up with an official name yet. We'll have to ask
Executive Director Dr. Kennedy, because obviously he will know if it has not been decided already, and curious to see what they will go with.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think it's going to bring a lot of excitement to not only Berks County schools, but LL schools as well. Because again, like I said, I think you're going to see teams that are going to be evenly matched as far as size is concerned, and I think it's going to make for some interesting rivalries to be developed. Beginning next year.
Eric, it's going to be for long bus rides when you got going to like Cookstown.
that too. Yes.
Awesome. Well, Eric, thank you so much. We knew we had the right guy to come on here and talk to us about football. We've got high school football, and we got 30 years of LL football history all on the podcast. Look forward to everybody hearing that. Can't thank you enough.
Well, thanks. I appreciate you having me on, and you guys keep up the good work with the podcast. They're entertaining. I like it.
Thanks. Yeah, we'll
Thanks.
try and see where it takes us.
Okay, good. Thanks.
All
See
right.
ya.
We'll say goodbye to Eric and we will get ready for the third quarter.